This is the first one without Ravi.
Dr. Ravi, yes.
Sir, we are live, sir.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Greetings and a very good morning to all the viewers and participants who have logged into our Anekdhara forum. Today, before we begin the webinar, we have an announcement to make. We are deeply distressed to announce the sad demise of our prime mover and co-founder of Anekdhara, Mr. Ravi Babu. Mr. Ravi Babu passed away on the 17th of this month after battling a small illness. I would request my friend Gagarin and co-founder to mention a few words about our loss. We are at a complete loss. So, Gagarin, please.
Good morning, all of you. As he has already told, whether loss also can be good, we do not know if that is Mother Nature's mysterious ways. I have to necessarily say good morning. And when I see such type of things, I always remember a shloka from Bhagavad Gita. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrutyuhu dhruvan janma mrutasya cha tasmada pariharyerdhe natvam sochitumarhasi natvam sochitumarhasi. For all the people who born, death is a must. Of course, that we all know. But it also says for all the people who die, rebirth is also must, that nobody knows. So at least Ravi Babu is not willing to believe this. But the next thing he would like to believe, since at least death is very certain, there is no point in worrying about it. That is exactly the reason maybe he very strongly refused the life support system. That indicates what brave heart Ravi is. See, so far as we are concerned,
ఆనందాల ఫ్రెండ్
loss very
ఈయన చచ్చిపోయాడు హైదరాబాద్ లో. సీనుతో పాటుగా ఈయన కూడా వారం రోజుల తర్వాత ఈయన చచ్చిపోయాడు.
And apart from a deep personal loss, it is certainly a loss for the movement, and our movement is how best we can serve the society apart from being happy with ourselves. So that particular movement, it is a great loss because Ravi is some sort of rebel in this way. So we are really feeling very sad. But at the same time, if at all the sadness has to be unburdened, there is no other way except to speak something about our friend so that our heaviness may come down. Like all of us, Ravi is not perfect with all his limitations, but at the same time, if at all I have to say, Ravi always try to follow, whether knowingly or unknowingly, that Niskama Karmi aspect of Gita. He always tried to do something wherever he is, whether he is in NIRD, in railways, and when he did his PhD from IIM, everywhere he tried his best. That way, he proved that particular proverb, one need not be father of a nation and one need not be maker of the constitutions in order to become great. One can be great in his own small way, as the squirrel proved in the legend Ramayana. So that way, Ravi is really great in his unexpected, say unconditional love for the cause he is trying to do. That is the reason why all the friends, even the closest friends, as well as the people who worked with him very limited time, they are also felt deeply anguished. And the only way we thought to unburden ourselves is talk a few words about him. When I remember Ravi, these lines I always remember. Lives of great men all remind us. Lives of great men all remind us. We can make our lives sublime. and Ravi tried to make his life sublime. And departing, leave behind us footprints on the sands of time, footprints that perhaps another sailing over life's solemn main, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother, seeing shall take heart again. Let us then be up and doing, with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labor and learn to wait. This is what Ravi has done. So we lost physical communication with Ravi Babu on 17th. We are all from the same batch, 1986. So that way it is a deep personal loss to us. And as many people felt the same way as me, I have written a small note for myself, but this I thought as a tribute to him, I'd like to share with all of you. I have written it for myself, but still it should be shared, I thought. Ravi, why I have written this, started with this is, I designed his wedding invitation. Ravi, in those joyful days, I crafted your wedding invitation gleefully. Now, dipping my soul in ink of sorrow, do I pen our elegies tearfully? Nonsense. Who says this is your final farewell? We are together ever. We are together ever, wishing a virtuous world and the world well. And I tell always for myself, Ravi is not far. If at all he is far, you are the sun, Ravi. You are the sun, waking me in human goodness each day. You are the dawn of hope, rooting out my fears, daring to sway. You are the twinkling star in the life's dark nights, bringing cheer to my weary heart. You are the pealing thunder in the ideal sky, gushing guts rain, igniting my spirit. You are the lightning unveiling the world's virtue in fiery flashes. You are the revealer, the doubter, and the questioner of divine certainties. Our passionate plans for peaking, that is what Anekdhara. Our passionate plans for peaking, like flame of the forest in hope spring. Oh, cancer, the cruel cancer, cruelly ravaging all your sap, left in our heart a horrid horror ring, yet boldly denying shaky life support system. You anointed us as your spirit's support stem. Enjoy, dear elf, my dear ethereal elf. Enjoy as we cling to your love like barnacles to astern. Enjoy, dear elf, as we cling to your love like barnacles to astern. If dust thou art to dust returnest, spoken not of the soul, we exist in every breath of the universe, eternally whole. Our love lulls not, as your spirit stories, my breaths toll. Nonsense. Who says this is your final farewell? We are in each other, ever wishing the world well. We are in each other, ever wishing the world well. So, not farewell, Ravi. You are in our embrace. We continue to be with you, and you continue to be with us, moving in the world, doing whatever may be the little squirrel service we do to the world. Thanks to all of you, the Anekdhara well-wishers and friends of Ravi, and thanks to the speakers. Kindly go ahead, handing over to Madhu. Madhu, please. Madhu, you are there?
I was muted. Okay. Thank you, Gagarin. Ravi will be with us definitely through Anekdhara and several other ways. So we will now move on. Today's webinar the title is Civil Servants in Quasi-Political Organizations and the Formalization of a Deep State. This is our 35th webinar. I'll take a few minutes to set the stage in terms of why did we choose this theme and what is its topicality. We all know that in a democracy, in a vibrant democracy, a civil service has to have certain immutable attributes. And these are very well known. And I will take you to a debate in the Constituent Assembly in August 1949, where H.V. Kamath said, wherever democratic institutions exist, experience has shown that it is essential to protect the public service as far as possible from political and personal influence, and to give it the position of stability and security, which is vital to its successful working as an impartial and efficient instrument by which government of whatever political complexion may give effect to its policies. In this spirit, the civil services conduct rules stipulate that no government servant shall be a member or otherwise be associated with any political party or organization which takes part in politics, nor shall he be involved in any manner in a political movement or activity. So, in keeping with this, the government of India had placed certain restrictions in 1966, which were followed up in 1970, saying that participation in the activities of the RSS and Jamaat-e-Islami by government servants will contravene the civil services conduct rules. That has been the position, and there was an alignment with the spirit of our democracy and also the conduct rules. These restrictions have been lifted in July 2024 this year. This brings us to the question, what is political? The Encyclopedia of Social Sciences refers to the term political as a set of actions and policies which are used to hold power or influence the working of a government. Among other things, it is basically a political contestation about cultural ideas, cultural identity, and recognition, as it is also about allocating material resources. Political should not be confused with electoral, because the political goes beyond the electoral and it is not synonymous with electoral. I would like to give an example of Japan. In Japan, there is an organization called Soka Gakkai, which is a Buddhist spiritual international, which has a strong subscribership. And this organization had formed a political front or a political party called the Komito, which has been active in electoral politics. Similarly, in India, we have seen that there have been a lot of debate in the press and media about the linkages between the ruling party and the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. So all these bring us to certain key questions. With its ever-expanding sphere of influence, is the RSS a merely cultural entity, as some would like to argue? What is the changing nature of Indian state, and what are the implications of participation of civil servants in quasi-political activities for Indian democracy? Where will Indian democracy stand? These and many more questions are engaging questions are likely to arise as we mull about this theme. So to discuss this today, we have two eminent persons, Shri Ashok Kumar Sharma, former ambassador and career diplomat of the Indian Foreign Service, and Shri Dinesh Narayanan, sorry. He's an author and senior journalist. This Dinesh Narayanan, I'll introduce him later, has authored a very important work on this theme of today's topic. So I will first introduce Shri Ashok Kumar Sharma, our first speaker of the day. And Shri Ashok Kumar Sharma joined the Indian Foreign Service in August 1981. As a diplomat, he served in Moscow, Kuwait, Karachi, Toronto, Tashkent in different capacities before being appointed as India's Consul General in St. Petersburg in 2002. He also served as RPO in Mumbai and was in charge of India's Passport and Visa Department in the Ministry of External Affairs in 2001 and 2. Between 2005 and 8, he was Ambassador of India to Suriname with concurrent accreditation as High Commissioner of India to Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. He was on deputation to the Ministry of Defense as Joint Secretary for over 2 years and served as a senior faculty member of the National Defense College in 2009-10, where he was a guide to 35 senior defense and civil service officers from several countries for their MPhil degree in strategic affairs. During 2011 to 2014, he was posted as Ambassador of India to Kazakhstan. In his last posting, he was Ambassador of India to Finland and Estonia from September 2014 to June 2017. After returning to India in July 2017, he has been devoting his time to academics and social work. And thank you, sir, for agreeing to speak with us. Before I hand over the stage to you, sir, I would like to request all our participants to post their questions on the YouTube chat box. These questions will take up after both our speakers complete their addresses. So with this, sir, it is over to you, sir. Shri Sharma, sir, please.
Thank you very much, sir. In fact, I will not use any jargons or technical terms. I will keep the conversation very simple, in a simple language. In other words, in a layman's language, so that everybody can understand what we are saying. As already stated during the introduction, Indian bureaucracy is unique in many ways. Immediately after independence, the government of the newly independent country tried to change its character as well as composition. The civil service existed before also during the British period. To some extent, it was the continuation of the same civil service. But then there were many changes carried out by our first Home Minister. India's first Home Minister, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, had called the civil services the steel frame of our newly independent country. He knew that India was multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multicultural, caste-ridden, and also full of regional divides and aspirations. It was not yet a nation, and there was no single nationhood. For example, what was common between Nagaland and Kerala, or what was between what is Uttarakhand now and Tamil Nadu, or say between Gujarat and Arunachal. Patel understood that the politicians will use all these fault lines to mobilize people on the basis of these fault lines. Of course, these fault lines exist and the politicians still use them. A new nation's destiny and direction could not be left only in the hands of politicians, who most of the time seek short-term gains for various reasons, but basically for electoral gains. Patel wanted continuity and moderation combined with experience, training, and domain experience and domain expertise to run the country and hold it together. Also, he needed a structure which was largely unbiased and fit to protect the most vulnerable and marginalized. But then why should administrators be neutral? Well, at least for IAS and IPS, the main task or duty is to defend and uphold the Constitution, which includes the protection of the constitutional rights of people, especially life, liberty, worship, and so on. Especially those of minorities and marginalized sections of the society. After independence, our main task was to deal with minorities, Dalits, and Adivasis, or so-called tribals. For this purpose, the administrator or civil servants had to be impartial, without any prejudice, and committed to the values of Constitution of India, whatever be their personal beliefs. Not only they had to be fair, they should also appear to be fair and impartial. Our Indian society is highly fragmented. Religion, caste, ethnicity, economic status, gender bias, and so on. These are some of the determining factors in our day-to-day life, especially if one belongs to poor, disadvantaged, marginalized, neglected sections of society, and nowadays, if he belongs to a minority. Secularism and democracy are the main pillars of our constitution. And it was found that secularism was the only way which could maintain order in such a diverse country. Only an impartial attitude on the part of police and administration can be fair to all parties or sections of society during any caste or communal clashes, as well as during day-to-day administration. What you have seen in Manipur is the latest example. In this regard, not only the services like IAS or IPS, but entire bureaucracy, including junior government functionaries like Tehsildars, Kanungos, station house officers, DSPs, and so on, teachers, professors, doctors, especially of government hospitals, and other state and central functionaries, they all had to be impartial. The judges at all levels are expected to be impartial. And in the civilized world, even in dictatorships and non-secular countries, the judges are generally expected to be impartial. We are a pluralistic society, and we need to respect our country's multi-ethnic, multi-faith, multicultural, and multi-regional character. This is why we had All India services, which served both states as well as center. It was decided that at least 50% officers of All India services, that is IAS, IPS, and Indian Forest Service, had to be from outside the state. This was meant to develop an All India outlook, as well as the bureaucracy, especially the All India services, were to become a vehicle for national integration. Here I do not exclude other services, even income tax, customs, railway services, postal services. All these services had All India character, where North Indians will go to South India, South Indians will come to North India, and go to each officer will go to different regions. It is not that he will spend his entire life in one region only. And this was a very good experiment for national integration as well as assimilation. The system was running reasonably well. But what has prompted this debate now? The government servants always had their personal faiths, religious affiliations, ideologies, and loyalties. However, they were barred from joining the organizations of political or divisive nature. Even though we had seen in the past, many serving officers and judges were attending the functions organized by the organizations based on caste, religion, and sects like Brahman Sabha, Jat Sabha, and so on. And bureaucrats and judges had been going to sundry babas or dharam gurus or gurus, and many of them used to wear their affiliations on their old shoulders. Many of such organizations or sects have been very communal and divisive and against social cohesion. However, these things were tolerated as the basic character of the state still remained neutral or largely secular. All these things had no official sanction and they were not glorified. And this was not the policy of the government. The communalism was always there, but it was not so open. Now it has come out of the closet, and even the judges at all levels have started giving communal judgments, which are openly partial and discriminatory. The immediate provocation for this debate or other similar debates is the order permitting the government servants to become members of RSS, whose ideology is well known. Having attended the RSS shakhas in the childhood, I can say that the history and idea of India taught to me in school through the textbooks and by my teachers was completely different from the discussions in the shakhas. Their worldview and especially the interpretation of our freedom movement, their views on Hitler, Gandhi, and towards Dalits and tribals were quite unpalatable to me even at that tender age. And I had to stop going there. This was despite my attraction towards their physical exercises and games, including yoga. I have first-hand experience of such communal rights and communal hatred right from my childhood. I was brought up in Meerut, which was infamous for communal rights at regular intervals. Every 2-3 years, we used to have big communal rights. There was no social media those days. But the rumor mills of the RSS and Jansangh, BJP's former avatar was Jansangh, were very efficient and effective. Within few hours, we used to receive cooked up stories and hate messages on social circuit. I have seen police behaving in a one-sided manner during those communal riots. In fact, the police used to be an active participant in these riots. You may have heard in Maliana, where police itself killed the minority members of minority during Ramzan, or Hashimpura, from where they picked up many youth, killed them and threw them into the canal in Ghaziabad district. Also, in neighboring areas of Meerut, like Khalapar riots in Muzaffarnagar, and not too far away from Meerut in Muradabad in 1980. In fact, I was preparing for my UPSC exams. My exam was in 1980. And during preparation itself, I had gone to Muradabad to see as to what had happened. So the communal rights are not new, but at the same time, they did not have any official approval, or at least the ruling party or political parties did not support them openly. One has also seen as to what happened in the Northeast Delhi riots of February 2020. The partisan role of police, administration, and judiciary still continues after more than 4.5 years. You may have heard the story how Justice Muralidhar was relieved early in the morning so that he could not hear the application of Mr. Harshmandar's NGO, Karwa Mohabbat. Because they had, at midnight, they had called Murlidhar, Justice Murlidhar, and told him that the police is not permitting the injured minority members to a better hospital for treatment. So he had to order at midnight that they should be shifted. And early morning, in the early morning, when he reached the Delhi High Court, he was told that he has been relieved. He has to take over in Chandigarh. Of course, the transfer had been announced long back, but he was relieved all of a sudden without notice. So our justice system has also become so biased. Now, most of the cases filed during the or after the Northeast Delhi riots of February 2020 have not stood the scrutiny of courts. But still, minority youth are behind bars without trial and no bails are being granted. Videos are available which shows the complicity of police and also the torture committed by them. A young man died because of beating by police when he was being asked to chant national song and Bharat Mata Ki Jai, etc. At the same time, no action was taken against the leaders of the ruling party who gave provocative and hate-filled speeches. Some of them did so in the presence of and under the protection of local police. Instead of taking action, they were promoted. One of them became a cabinet minister in the center who had asked the people to shoot the traitors. Traitors means minorities. The Constitutional Conduct Group visited the area and set up a citizens committee chaired by Justice Madan B. Lokur, whose members included Justice A.P. Shah, Justice R.S. Sodhi, Justice Anjana Prakash, and former Home Secretary Mr. G.K. Pillai. The report of this committee highlights the biased and one-sided behavior of all law enforcing authorities. This is not to say that all the so-called cultural and social organizations linked with some ideology, political or otherwise, are and also inclined towards a particular party are harmful. Sometimes such affiliations could also be benign. And it was true of many pro-left individuals in the civil service and lower ranks of bureaucracy, and also in judiciary at various levels. Such individuals were found to be less corrupt, pro-poor, pro-people, and secular. Many who believe in social justice are more likely to be helpful to the disadvantaged and marginalized sections of society, including minorities, Dalits, and Adivasis. So what I wanted to highlight here was that all ideological or cultural affiliations are not bad unless they are divisive or anti-people. Now, I would like to speak about the international implications of the ultra-right ideologies like that of RSS. What you have seen in Canada and the US is just a trailer. They do not know how to handle foreign affairs and even covert operations, if any. Whether or not there was any involvement of Indian agencies is not proven yet. However, the social media of BJP RSS started a campaign to glorify the PM and National Security Advisor as Rambos, saying, जो घर में घुस के मारेंगे. We had teasers on TV channels. डोवल के शेरों ने किया कमाल. कहां तक छुपोगे, कहां तक बचोगे, ढूंढ निकालेंगे, and so on. Our TV media and newspapers started saying that this was a new normal and India's enemies were not safe anywhere Canadian government needs no other proof. They can produce the clips of Indian channels and cuttings of Indian newspapers that there is a general acceptance that Indian agencies have become like Mossad. Even PM, Home Minister and other leaders started using these incidents in their election speeches, of course indirectly, to show that the country's foreign policy had entered a new era and हमारी सरकार घर में घुसकर मारती है. This has made our country a laughing stock. I personally do not believe that our agencies are so naive and they will commit such murders or plan such murders. But it is our social media, it is the IT cell of BJP, RSS combined, or our mainstream media, so-called Godi channels or Hindi newspapers, who have created such an impression not only within the country but also abroad. Now I come to the idea of Akhand Bharat. The idea of Akhand Bharat is another dangerous powder keg. How can a diplomat deal with his counterparts in neighboring countries as equals if he or she believes that these countries have to become part of India sooner or later? No doubt, our relations with all neighboring countries are at all-time low. Now, there is a particular policy apart from permitting the membership. There is a well-thought-out policy of catch them young. The UPSC has a respectable and by and large trusted record. In fact, it was one of the most respectable institutions in India as far as civil services exam was concerned. However, if you see the composition of UPSC members, including its chairman now, and try to find out their background, only one kind of people committed to a certain ideology are being appointed. Even if they are retired civil servants or defense officers, a particular kind of retired officers are being appointed. Interview panels for IAS and central services are full of their followers. Their followers means rightists. The reason is that they need robos. They do not need officers who can think. They need officers like computers who will do whatever is told to them. Garbage in, garbage out. Now, as far as Dalits and Adivasis are concerned, their reservations have taken a big hit. In any case, there are no government or public sector jobs. Even in the universities, teachers, professors, and employees from a particular background, particular ideology are being recruited. Incompetent professors are being appointed vice chancellors, and universities are becoming committed to a particular ideology and worldview. One can see the RSS shakhas and parades in the JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University, whereas the other groups are not permitted, even seminars. There is no academic freedom anymore. For civil service recruitment, many coaching centers and mock interview shops have been opened, which indoctrinate the civil service aspirants even before their selection. On the other hand, if some candidates from Muslim community are selected in the UPSC list, they are accused of UPSC jihad, and a concerted campaign is started in media, TV channels, and social media. When it was found a few years ago that about 4.5% candidates successful in the UPSC exam, mainly under the OBC category, of course, who get reservation. There was a big slander campaign in RSS-supported media against this. And it was termed as UPSC jihad. One had to go to Supreme Court to put a stop to this. It was openly announced that the Muslims wanted to take over administration of this country. Now, does a minority of 50% not deserve even 4 or 5% representation in civil services? It is nauseating. One has seen in the recent past what kind of judges are being appointed in the higher judiciary, including the Supreme Court. How judges speak the language of hate mongers and the ruling dispensation. They even get Rajya Sabha seats or tickets in assembly or parliament elections, or become governors. When it is a case of bail, in a PMLA or UAPA case, the cases go to a particular bench in the Supreme Court. And even before the case is heard, one knows what is going to happen to the bail application. Same thing is happening time and again in the cases of Umar Khalid or Sharjeel Imam. Whenever their bench is announced, one knows about the outcome in advance. Now I will come to scientific institution. The situation in scientific institutions has become very bad. It has gone from bad to worse now. Already our scientists lack scientific temper and rational thinking. Now they have to apply for the projects of pseudoscience if they want funding. That is why ISRO chairman says that the Westerners stole our ancient knowledge and peddled it in their own name. No doubt he will get further extensions. Now I will come to the defense forces. As far as the Army, Air Force or Navy are concerned, they were by and large neutral and secular. Their training systems provided for multi-faith and multicultural character. But nowadays, even in the army, a particular ideology is being given preference. A particular kind of speakers are going and interacting with them. Not only that, you may have seen a video circulating on social media that all the top brass of Haryana police are being entertained by ISKCON devotees who are singing, Hare Krishna song in their official meeting. I mean, we do not know where these things will go. And now because the membership of such organizations, or at least a particular organization, has become official and legal, now most of these people will carry their affiliation on their shoulders, and also their decisions will be largely affected by their commitment and ideology to a particular section or a particular belief system. I think this is very negative and I should say very reprehensible action of Government of India to have permitted all these things officially and legally. As we say in Hindi कि आटे में नमक बराबर चलता है, पर नमक में आटा नहीं मिलाना चाहिए. This is what is happening. All these things existed before also. but they were not so open. Now they are being done openly and also with pride. Now all the civil servants, all the judges know that if they want to curry favors with the powers that be, they need to be affiliated to a certain party affiliated to a certain ideology or take a particular kind of decisions. I think this will destroy the basic character of our bureaucracy, our judiciary, and not in distant future, even in our armed forces, which are also being indoctrinated into a particular way. I may have gone to other extremes because I myself do not believe in any religion or faith or God. I am an atheist. But still, I view all these things as cultural. Culturally, I also belong to that environment, and I am affected by all these things in my day-to-day life whenever I interact with other people. And I have found that in last few years, the situation has aggravated, and it is very difficult to find justice if you are on the other side of the fence. So with this, I will complete my lecture of today, and I will wait for the pointed questions so that I can explain why I am saying so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for a comprehensive exposition on the theme of the day. It was indeed a revelation that you had personal experience attending the RSS shakas, your personal experience and of having experienced communalism and communal riots within the proximity of where you live, and also your exposure about the impact of this regressive ideology on the international affairs, given that your career in the diplomatic service. And the way you summed up that how this regressive ideology is spreading to various segments of the government, the judiciary, the scientific establishment, civil service, and even the defense forces. And also in summing up that as if it is evident that the government wants mere robots who adhere to a regressive ideology and work towards implementing these ideas without questioning. It was a very, very logical and dispassionately put talk, sir. We really enjoyed it. We'll wait till we come back for the question and answer to get more such insights from you. So friends, we'll now move on to our second eminent speaker, Mr. Dinesh Narayanan. Let me give a short introduction of Sri Dinesh Narayanan. Sri Dinesh Narayanan is an award-winning journalist, columnist, and author. His book, The RSS and the Making of the Deep Nation, has been acknowledged by reviewers and academics as an original contribution to the political discourse in India. In his over 30 years at several leading general and financial publications, including the Times of India and the Economic Times, he has written on a range of subjects, including finance, regulation, macroeconomy, and politics. He was part of the founding leadership teams in the city newspaper Mumbai Mirror and the Indian edition of Forbes magazine. Mr. Dinesh also co-founded and was managing editor of a newsletter and podcast company which published The Signal, a widely read business and tech newsletter. He currently writes a column for ndtv.com and is working on a book on contemporary international politics. We are indeed fortunate to have Mr. Dinesh Narayanan, because he has just published this book, and which is a treatise on how the RSS has grown and how it is changing the characteristics of the Indian state as we are now witnessing. Thank you so much. Now the floor is yours, sir. Sir, you are muted. Yeah. We can't hear you yet.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, good.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. And thank you, Mr. Reddy, for that kind introduction. I did not have the opportunity to meet Mr. Ravi Babu, your co-founder. My acquaintance with him was only an email, which was co-signed by you and Mr. Gagarin. But even a cursory glance through your YouTube channel and your speakers roster sort of shows how Anekdhara has created a public platform for high quality perspectives and opinion on contemporary issues. So my compliments to the founders, and I also doff my hat to Mr. Ravi Babu's commitment to such a noble endeavor. I also join you and others in the entire Anekdhara community in remembering him. It's my privilege to speak alongside Ambassador Ashok Sharma, who has practiced diplomacy at the highest levels on the world stage, as you have already mentioned. I will try to explain the motivations and methods of this close-knit organization, which we're talking about. It's 100 years old. It's embedded in the highest echelons of the country to the grassroots, almost like a neural network. Now, many in the audience here are intimately familiar with the inner workings of the state apparatus, and Ambassador Sharma just explained how things are working today. What I will do is that I will try to unpack how the RSS is working to make the nation of its imagination by spreading its ideology widely and embedding its core values deeply in the national DNA, so to speak. But before elaborating on the RSS's attempts to build a deep nation, let me briefly touch upon the concept of deep state. As you already know, which is also part of the title of today's conversation. As you already know from my bio, the title of my book is RSS and the Making of the Deep Nation. And thank you, Mr. Reddy, for kindly displaying it. And it is obviously a play on this term, the deep nation. So what is a deep state? I don't have to explain the deep state to the people who have worked in the government for such a long time, but for the lay viewer, reader who might be listening in. So with some variations, it's largely understood as a group of individuals who operate from within and from outside the state apparatus, almost like in a coordinated manner, and who also subscribe to pushing sort of common and perpetual goals. I say perpetual goals because they, irrespective of the agenda of the political dispensation of the moment, it may or may not align with them. But irrespective of that, the agenda keeps it's always alive, and the goals are always in sight. This is important to know because how a deep state works and how the RSS imagination of a deep nation, this is where the crucial or fundamental difference comes in. And clearly that would also influence the modus operandi. Many of you will also be familiar with John Mearsheimer, who teaches political science at the University of Chicago, one of the foremost political thinkers today. I mean, even those who have not heard of him earlier probably would now be familiar with his analysis of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and why it came about. So Professor Mearsheimer says that when we talk about the deep state, we are really talking about the administrative state. As an aside, when Donald Trump became president in 2017, his chief strategist, Steve Bannon, said that every day would be a battle for the deconstruction of the administrative state. And Mir Sharma says that Trump failed to do that, which shows how entrenched and embedded the deep state in the US is. And usually we talk about the deep state in the context of the US because that's the most powerful one anywhere in the world. At a recent summit in September of this podcast called All In Podcast, and they hold an annual summit. At that summit, Professor Mir Sharma and Professor Jeffrey Sachs were together. Economist Professor Jeffrey Sachs from the University of Columbia. On this panel, this question was asked, what is a deep state? And Professor Sachs gave this example of the contemporary deep state in the United States. So in his telling, it comprises individuals such as Dick Cheney, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, etc. But he particularly pointed out Victoria Nuland, now his fellow professor at Columbia. Newland, Professor Sachs says, that is the face of the deep state. Now, I quote here, Victoria Newland, has been in every administration for the last 30 years. She was in the Clinton administration, wrecking our policies towards Russia in the 1990s. She was in the Bush administration, the junior Bush, with Cheney, wrecking our policies towards NATO enlargement. She was then in the Obama administration as Hillary's spokesperson first, and then making a coup in Ukraine in February of 2014. Not a great move. She started a war. Then she was Biden's Undersecretary of State. End quote. I think this offers a sort of a current understanding of what the Washington deep state is all about. It also helps understanding its priorities, its nature of operation, so that there is a central entrenched network that exists in the US, spread across institutions, which has this network has a vested interest in perpetuating a certain kind of foreign policy, which maximizes American power and its global hegemony. I mean, there are extensions to these outside the government, obviously the military-industrial complex and the intermixing of commercial interest with US national security. So this former congressional staff member, and he's also an author of the book called The Deep State, The Fall of the Constitution and the Rise of the Shadow Government, Mike Lofgren, he calls Wall Street as the ultimate backstop of the deep state operations, as they generate so much money that they can pay government officials beyond even their wildest dreams. As an example, he points out General David Petraeus, who went on to work for the buyout firm KKR. Now, in the US, the fungibility between the private sector and the government is a flow of professionals from both segments is quite common. And a lot of people work in the government, then go back to the private sector, they work in think tanks. I mean, this is all common knowledge. So there is an intermixing of private and public, private interests and the government in a way which is rarely seen elsewhere in the world. And it's very little in India, in fact. In fact, in India, the lateral entry of private sector professionals into bureaucracy itself is frowned upon, as we know. And I think until Mr. R.V. Shahi became the power secretary, there were very few people who had come into the government from the private sector, at least at that level. So the implication of a deep state is that usually does not have the national interest at its heart. I mean, sometimes the national interest might align, but there are other vested interests which are more important, and that's not the national interest breed. And it's usually servile to extraneous interests, which are mostly commercial, and sometimes it could be aligned with other states, but that's rarely the case. It's largely, usually it's about money and power, of course. Irrespective of what those extraneous interests are, there is one equation which is usually common, whether it's in the US or in India, when it comes to a deep state, that is, which is power begets money, money begets power. In this equation sort of is almost universal, if you could say. Now, let me come to India and the RSS. Let me start with a quote from the RSS chief, Mohan Bhagwat. This was from a speech of October 12th, that is this Vijayadashmi, which is also the RSS Foundation Day. Quote, words like, I'm quoting this because this is where the word deep state also enters into the current discourse in the RSS also. So, begin quote, words like deep state, wokeism, cultural Marxists are in discussion these days. In fact, they are the declared enemies of all cultural traditions. Complete destruction of values, traditions, and whatever is considered virtuous and auspicious is a part of the modus operandi of this group. The first step of this modus operandi is to bring the mind-shaping systems and institutions of the society under one's influence. For example, the education system and educational institutions, media, intellectual discourse, etc., and to destroy the thoughts, values, and belief of the society through them. In a society living together, an identity-based group is motivated to separate on the basis of its actual or artificially created specialty, demand, need, or a problem. A feeling of victimhood is created in them. By fanning discontent, that element is pulled apart from the rest of the society and made aggressive against the system. Direct conflicts are created by finding fault lines in the society. An atmosphere of anarchy and fear is created by intensifying distrust and hatred towards the system. Towards the system, laws, governance, administration, etc. This makes it easy to establish one's dominance over that country. End quote. Now, the RSS is an organization that has entered its 100th year of its founding. It was founded in 1925. I mean, that's a rarity even globally. The organization which Mr. Reddy talked about in Japan, Soka Gakkai, was also formed around 1930, 1935, not the current avatar, but its previous avatar. But barring that, there are few organizations in the world which are of the nature of the RSS, which continue to exist even after 100 years, excluding political parties probably, and others don't have this kind of longevity. It's also remarkable because for the most part of its existence, it has also functioned like an underground movement. It was literally true for brief periods, thrice in its post-India's independence lifetime because of state proscription. As you know, it was banned in 1948, it was banned in 1975 during the emergency, and again in 1992 after the demolition of the Babri Masjid. The trigger of today's discussion, for instance, today's discussion happened in 1966 after the Goraksha Andolan, which turned violent in Delhi, resulted in many deaths, led by Naga sadhus and organized by multiple organizations, including of Karpatri Maharaj and all of those people, RSS, Jansangh, everyone was involved in that. That office memorandum was of 1966, dated November 30. It was in the nature of a clarification that members of the RSS and Jamaat-e-Islami and participation in their activities would constitute a violation of Sub-Rule 1 of Rule 5 of the Central Civil Services or CC's Conduct Rules of 1964, which debars the participation of government servants in political activity. The sub-rule was that no government servant shall be a member of or be otherwise associated with any political party or any organization which takes part in politics, or shall he take part in, subscribe in aid of, or assist in any other manner any political movement or activity. And clearly this is a rule which draws from international doctrine and evolution from the Indian debates in the Constituent Assembly and all of it, which Ambassador Sharma has already laid out. Now, the current one, which is the order which removed it's just a simple statement that RSS is out of this original order. Now, in 1925, when KB Hedgewar, who was a doctor from Nagpur, founded the RSS, the stated objective was to organize Hindus. Initially, also to fight for independence, but the primary objective was again centered around Hindus and moving towards or with the vision of a Hindu Rashtra in mind. It believes that Hindus and only Hindus have the rightful claim on India or Bharat. It also believes that the disunity of Hindus has caused the nation to be dismembered, and it continues to believe that this is in the danger of further fragmentation. And so it is preparing a cohort of volunteers or Swayamsevak whose life's work will be to protect the nation. And it's training volunteers to provide leadership in various fields and help entrench the Sangha ideology and values in the society. Now, the founder and early ideologues, they had identified, when I say early ideologues, it's Golwalkar, who had written a lot about this. Hedgewar had hardly written anything in his lifetime, but most of the writings, initial writings to Sangh, apart from drawing from Savarkar, they also come from Madhav Sadashiv Golwalkar, who was the second Sarsangachalak, technically the third, but the second well-known Sarsangachalak of the RSS. He had identified Muslims, Christians, and communists as the three principal threats to the Hindu nation of the RSS's imagination. But as RSS came out more and more out into the open, it is mounted that it is an anti-Muslim and anti-Christian. So recently, not very long ago, it was these two were amended as the principal threats were Islamic fundamentalism and Christian evangelism, missionary evangelism. The RSS constitution, which was written after the 1948 ban, and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel pretty much forced the organization to have a written constitution. It expressly bars it from political activity, and it has since then it has steadfastly maintained that it's a cultural organization. But then there are another 3 dozen or so organizations that are ideologically inspired by the RSS, and they're also manned by its own trained volunteers, pracharaks who are loaned to these organizations. Those include the political arm, the Bharatiya Janata Party, the Vishwendra Parishad, the Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh, the Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad, Vidya Bharati, Seva Bharati, Swadeshi Jagan Manch, and so on, and that's several others. I'm just going to refer to them as this popular collective designation given to them as the Sangha Parivar. This expansion, this sort of Armada model, where there's a mothership and several others surrounding it, is quite an important model, a notable model, really. The RSS itself is prohibited from political activities, but a political party that it literally reports to, that is not, clearly. So this conveniently federated architecture, deniability coexists with active participation. And the Sarsangachalak Mohan Bhagwat has said this, and I quote, Bharatiya Janata Party, Bharat Sarkar, and Sangh are 3 different entities. Sangh doesn't interfere in it. Our Swayamsevaks are there, so we say or do something, they certainly think about it. They're responsible for the consequences of their actions. Their blessings and sins are their own, which is what I end quote. This is what I mentioned that the federated architecture allows it both deniability as well as active participation. Now, how does RSS participate in electoral politics? Again, let me illustrate with an example. I had long conversations with a lot of people in the RSS while I was writing a profile of Mr. Sanjalak Mohan Bhagwat for the Caravan magazine in 2014, just before the elections. And a conclusion was that RSS had helped BJP come to the cusp of power. And during those conversations, and the Lok Sabha campaign was at its peak, the Sangh had publicly stated that it is going to roll out a nationwide voter registration initiative. This drive, which it had, and RSS does things meticulously in a very planned and disciplined manner. And so there were thousands of these RSS workers on the ground who were registering voters, they were updating electoral rolls, and they were campaigning door to door to achieve 100% voting. The instructions given explicitly were there and publicly known for that they should not be canvassing for any one party or individual, but they should be getting people out, make them aware of their constitutional as citizens' duty of voting and come out and vote in large numbers. And the target was obviously 100% voting. One of the Swayamsevaks I spoke to in Delhi, in Sarojini Nagar area, where they had gone around in teams canvassing votes, registering voters, and for this awareness campaign, they had gone to about 400 houses, handing out flyers. Those flyers, when I checked them out, it was like one side of the sheet was like talked about urban economic issues, roads, utilities. It also mentioned about pet political themes which the RSS had, which at that time, 2013-14, was terrorism, Pakistan, all of it. Flying the tricolor at Lal Chowk in Srinagar. But then it also said at the end of it, do you know who has achieved all of it? One ordinary man in Gujarat. And after handing it over, obviously, his name won't be written on the flyer, but it will canvas saying that please vote for Mr. Modi. So, as you can see in this, like the provisions of the Constitution are largely observed in letter, but not really in spirit often. But the RSS also says so. Let me also mention another peculiarity of the organization. The RSS doesn't have a membership system. So you will not find a register of RSS members. And the RSS also says that we neither compel people to join the RSS or any of its organizations, neither do we ask them to leave or they can come and leave as they please. So why I say this is also because a few years ago, when one of the RSS office bearers in Goa, Subhash Velinka, he floated a political party because there was local issues which he was fighting for, and then he wanted to float a political party. He was still official office bearer of the RSS, and then he went ahead and floated one, and the very day the RSS removed him from his official position and asked him to go. Similarly, RSS volunteers or former office bearers and others have also come together often to form political outfits which oppose the BJP. It happened last year in Madhya Pradesh. Some 200 of them came together to launch a political party, a political setup which was opposed to the BJP, saying that the BJP does not really is following the RSS agenda, ideology, and whatnot as they thought. Now these things keep happening. So in that sense, it's quite fluid, which is why I say that oftentimes it is followed in letter when it comes to the core organization and the office bearers, but not when it comes to others. And because there is no formal membership in the organization, that the liability always exists. And they also say that anybody is free to join any political setup, any cultural organization. In 2017, Mohan Bhagwat had a 3-day lecture series in Delhi, in which he explained and to the extent that he also said there is no India without Muslims. So a lot of things are fluid in nature. A lot of things are kept fluid in nature. A lot of things are issues which are also core to the RSS are sometimes postponed, sometimes brought ahead, depending upon the political environment and the political sensitivities. So when it comes to the state apparatus and political power is important to the Sangh. It helps it grow and helps it put institutions in the hands of people it considers aligned with its ideology, and if not put people who are aligned with its ideology into positions of where they can influence the workings of that institution. The question to ask is, how do you create an ideological groupthink on the highest level of the government? And which in this case would be the bureaucracy, because as I said, this is where the similarity with the deep state comes in, that irrespective of the political dispensation of the moment, the agenda should continue, the goals should always be kept in mind, and work should continue towards it. Now, the easiest way to mold thinking is at an earlier stage, right? So the RSS has inspired institutions such as Sankal, which train aspiring civil servants. When the first time the Vajpayee government came to power, which was the first time that an RSS Swayamsevak was, so to say, became prime minister, and many others became ministers in the central government. There was during the Janata government, yes, but this was when they had considerable. BJP was the largest party, and even though it was a coalition government, it held significant power. Now, during that government's time, there was a realization in the RSS, and that there were not enough people in the government who were aligned to the RSS ideology or the methods, and they found it very difficult to push through certain things which they wanted to push through. So a program was set up with the help of a conglomerate, the Surya Group, the Jayaprakash Agarwal. So Agarwal's had a foundation called the Surya Foundation, which exclusively recruits RSS volunteers. They train them in different kinds of government work, ranging from volunteers who would help panchayat officials at the village level to even aides attached to parliamentarians and ministerial offices. So it is devised multiple ways to embed volunteers in various fields and embed the ideology in various fields. And a High Court judge, Calcutta High Court judge, recently revealed that his farewell function, how he has been a lifelong Swayamsevak. And anyway, we know that the most famous RSS Swayamsevak is PM Modi himself. And here is the difference between a deep state and a deep nation, and why I call it the deep nation, and where RSS differs from other organizations. And it is only this aspect. The RSS does not want to exist as an organization within the society, as one of the many organizations, however big it might be. But it wants to transform the entirety of the society to its way of thinking and working. So no individual or institution, the Sangh doesn't want any institution to be left untouched by its ideology. And that is how it will build a deep nation, where the ideology itself is encoded in the national DNA. And so it is relentlessly persuading people. individually, in groups, constantly bombarding the public sphere with propaganda. One of the RS Sangh leaders, is also a Prachar Pramukh now, Sunil Ambekar. He's written a book on the future course of the RSS, and quoting Vivekananda, he says, begin quote, there are three stages necessary for the future of India. The whole secret lies in organization, accumulation of power, and coordination of will. In the Sangh's life, the first two stages are already true. We are in the third stage, and the Sangh is working on the coordination of wills. I'll stop here and happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, sir, for a very, very exhaustive coverage about how this now near to 100-year-old organization has evolved, starting from the concept of a deep state to the evolution of its ideology and how they work in the electoral context, and also about how in recent the basic characteristic of it being fluid, no membership, keeping things hazy, and but at the same time wanting to envelop the entire society with its ideology, and that way the how you have demarcated a deep state from a deep nation, where the RSS does not want to exist as an organization within the society, but wants to envelop the entire society, kind of covers the entire gamut of the nature of RSS and the tactics it has adopted to expand as it is reaching its centenary year, and its implications for the Indian society. Thank you so much for such an insightful exposition on the topic. Now, with your permission, sir, I'll take the questions. There seem to be several. The first is, of course, about this Ambassador Sharma. What should be the reason for an ideology of hatred, not just being palatable, but becoming a personal god to be zealously worshipped? And the weapons of these gods are used wildly to attack other human beings. Not just a case of mass hysteria. What is behind this development?
Well, what I have experienced is that, Hindu society is a highly fragmented society. So one of the reasons was that they, RSS or, as Hindutva ideologues wanted to unite the society, and to unite a particular section of society, you need an enemy. Just like fascism. I'm not saying that it is 100 fascism, but they have fascistic tendencies. So you need an enemy. That is number one. And number two, you have to use the existing symbols. Like why Marxist or communists failed in India. They were using foreign symbols. They were using some ideology which was not understood by people here, which was of a foreign origin. But at the same time, RSS ideology became very popular because elements of this ideology already existed in most of the sections of the society, especially among upper caste Hindus, the so-called Brahmins, Baniyas or Vaishyas, and Thakurs, and even well-off OBCs. So it is easy to organize you on something which already exists. It is very difficult to organize you on something new. I think this is one of the reasons. And also, you every day you find new gods and goddesses and new traditions. Like North India never had the tradition of Ganpati. Now each colony, each street has Ganpati, or people keep Ganpati in their house also. And later on they go and, they put it in water, either pond or some river or even canal. So now these things already existed in some form or other, but to unite the whole of India, you need one kind of Hinduism. And Hinduism in South was different. In North it was different, and different castes had their own traditions. So RSS had an agenda of unifying all these traditions and have one particular type of religion or one particular type of culture. They always say that Islam has one book, or the Christianity has one book. Why can't we have one book? Now, if we can't have one book, at least we can have one type of festivals which have pan-India presence. So I think this may be the main reason.
Would you like to respond, Dinesh? Muted. You
Sorry,
muted.
I was on mute. Could you repeat the question, please?
The question is, what should be the reason for an ideology of hatred, not just being palatable, but becoming a personal god to be zealously worshipped and used to attack other human beings? What is where does it stem from, this kind of acceptance of this ideology of hatred?
I really can't say, because one, it is an organization which is around for 100 years, right? And it has trained people right from a young age, volunteers, and they go out into the society and spread the word, so to say. It's like a missionary zeal. And irrespective of what the ideology is, it doesn't matter. You can see any kind of ideology can be propagated, and it is true of any country. If the soil is fertile, and especially if there is distress in the country, when people do not have, let's say, purpose, or they're looking for purpose, then it becomes fertile ground for any kind of ideology. Irrespective of whether it is right wing, whether it is left wing, extreme, it doesn't matter. Distress at the base of it creates. So in their book, the first comprehensive profile of the RSS was written by Walter Anderson and Sridhar Damle I think the book was published in 1986. One of the key things which they mention in that is that the RSS was largely limited to urban areas. It was not able to penetrate into villages in India in most places. And one of the reasons which they mention is the strength of the local communities and how they functioned as a community with all their diversity. There was a function for each element of that community. And it was very difficult to penetrate into it. But once that community started breaking down in villages, and it was easy in let us say, a city, because the communities were already either narrow or broken already. People who came from villages felt orphaned in cities. So there is fertile ground for any kind of ideology.
So there are a set of 3 questions on civil servants. It starts with one posed by Mr. Radhakrishnan Srinivasan. He says, USA, the oldest democracy, allows civil servants to publicly declare their political affiliations and continue to be in civil service. It is interesting to note our bureaucracy is immature, and if our bureaucracy is malleable, then something is fundamentally wrong, either in the selection or in training. There are 2 related questions and comments. That is by Mr. Ravindranath Mortha, who should be blamed for the partisan behavior of civil servants? No proper training and outlook given to them, or political pressure. Then another comment he has made is the training needs to be more pragmatic and including social responsibility and accountability. Ambassador Sharma, would you like to?
Well, American system is different. It is a spoils system where the political parties in power appoint their own members to various posts. In India and also in America, bureaucracy does not play a my-baap role that it plays in India. In India, because of backwardness, because of poverty, because of underdevelopment, because of the scarcity of resources, a bureaucrat distributes favors. Whereas in America, it doesn't happen to that extent. Of course, there are corporate fights, where bureaucrats or the senior functionaries can favor or disfavor. But at lower levels, things are quite streamlined, and the service, the basic public service is very, very impersonal and impartial. And this is true of most European countries, most developed countries. That is one reason. Another reason is the salary structure of bureaucrats. Now also, even though there have been several these pay commissions, but the salaries of government servants are not as much as they ought to be. For example, a degree college lecturer in a remote town, a senior lecturer gets more salary than the district collector of that town or SP of that town. Now, SP and district collector, they are 24 hours on duty, and they have so much of responsibility to share, where this college lecturer hardly goes twice or thrice a week, or maybe 5 or 6 hours a week. So there has to be some balance. I think bureaucracy, especially some services, need to be paid better. Another thing is, as I said earlier, the scarcity of resources. And because of scarcity of resources, the bureaucrats will like to go to those posts which are attractive, where either they can make money or they can, wield power, or at least they can become famous and be satisfied that they are powerful or they are doing something good. Now, because such openings are limited and number of bureaucrats is higher than these openings, they try to align with the powers that be. During Congress regime, these things used to be on personal basis. Like if somebody talks about me, if I want to please somebody personally. But now that personal favor has become ideological favor. Now that personal contact or personal sifarish, you may say, or rasukh, as we say, is not sufficient. It has to be combined with a particular ideology. That is another reason. And of course, both bureaucrats and politicians are to be blamed. Politicians also want their own people, their own lackeys who can serve their purpose. And bureaucrats also want power and money, and they will do whatever the politicians want. So it is both ways.
So in your opinion, is something possible regarding selection and training?
Selection, yes, of course, you have to change the interview boards. Interview boards should not be ideological. During our time, the interview boards were not ideological. Now they are ideological or party affiliated. You go to any university and see who are sitting there to select lecturers or professors. You will understand that who will get it. You know in advance that who will get it. Beyond that, training has a limited purpose. And a party which wants to run the country in a particular style will give you only that kind of training. So if you want to train them, the government, first of all, the government and the top leadership has to be impartial. When the top leadership is not impartial, any kind of training will not help. In fact, nowadays, at least in IPS, IAS, IFS, and other central services, more and more candidates are coming from either technical field, BTech types, or MBBS, or even dental surgeons, or veterinary surgeons. Now, in social sciences, we were taught certain things like Gandhian values, freedom movement, and about social structure. Now, these people come from technical background. They have not studied social other subjects, as we call them, fine arts, or so not fine arts, art subjects like sociology, philosophy, history, political science. And these people came with the sole purpose of power, money, and status. So it's very difficult with the current kind of recruitment to create similar kind of bureaucracy that exists, idealistic bureaucracy that existed in 1950s. Another thing is, till early 1980s, or at least till 1970s, the other option most of these aspirants had was either become a lecturer or in a college or university, or do PhD, go abroad, or maybe go to private sector. Private sector was not very well paid those days, so you used to get a little higher salary and not many perks. Private or corporate sector was not developed in India. Till then, there was no IT sector. So you used to compare your income and your status and your facilities with your other classmates who were lecturers, or in private sector, or who had become advocates. But nowadays, with whom you compare? You may compare yourself. I mean, the new recruits compare themselves with those who have gone to the US, made millions and billions. They compare themselves to the doctors who make millions of dollars or crores of rupees in India itself. Now, or dentists who do a rolling practice, or the advocates, especially the corporate lawyers. If you are LLB, you compare yourself with them, and then you feel that you have been cheated. You are making both ends meet with difficulty. So they tend to become corrupt more easily than our previous recruits who were recruited in 1950s and 1960s. This is one of the reasons.
Mr. Narayanan, would you want to take this, or should I move on the civil servants?
Please move on.
Okay.
Civil services.
Okay. So this next is on the foreign policies, by a question by Ms. Yamini, and she says that if for Indian foreign policy has taken such a big hit, and India became, or is fast becoming, the laughing stock in other countries, how many Indians believe the Vishwaguru charade? Isn't the claim Godi media is responsible for the sad state seem not facile? What must be the real causes for this Indian foreign policy taking a big hit?
Should I speak?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. See, what has happened is that Indian media, and especially the visual media, TV, they run a campaign. Whenever the Prime Minister goes abroad, they are guided by the powers that be. There are big groups of journalists and consultants who will tell them what will be run on television that day, or what will be discussed during the primetime show. I have the experience because I have also served for 3 years under this regime, and I have seen the big changes in between. Also, our media is corporate media. It is not an independent business. It is part of big empires. Even newspapers are not profitable. They are not there because they are newspapers. They are there because they belong to some group, except, of course, maybe some papers like, say, the Telegraph or Indian Express. Most of these are run by big business houses for whom the profit motive is the main thing. And they need favors from government not only for their newspaper business, but other businesses. Their main money comes from other businesses. Now, News 18, I know that group owns many channels. Now, their money doesn't come from these channels. Their money comes from elsewhere. Reliance's money comes from elsewhere. Or even Adani's money doesn't come from NDTV. He must be making big losses. His money comes from elsewhere. So media is an appendage to other businesses, and they will do whatever the government wants or whatever the political party in power wants. Now they are told to run these campaigns. Now you see the foreign visits of our prime minister. What do you know he discusses with the foreign dignitaries? Now everybody has understood. Their ambassadors must be sending secret cables to their bosses that you don't have to much. There's nothing much to discuss. The discussions have already taken place at official level. So one-to-one meetings have lost their importance. So they are told that, look, he likes this thing. He likes to go around in the garden. He likes the tea to be served on your porch or maybe on your in your garden or in your drawing room. So they try to personalize these visuals, and when he goes abroad. He's Indian diaspora is collected. People know who pays for it. Partly government bears the expenditure. Partly it is the corporate sector from India who may be sending money, or the local NRIs. They must be collecting money, especially the Gujarati businessmen and so on. Now, in India, the impression is created that we have become Wish Guru because we have such get-togethers. Such get-togethers are not held even by presidents and prime ministers or opposition parties in those countries because their politics is of different kind. So our media, especially the TV media, and also Hindi newspapers, include English newspapers, sometimes give balanced view, but Hindi newspapers generally write what is given to them in the handouts issued by that team in PMO or maybe BJP headquarters. So our media does not discuss any foreign policy issue. They run a campaign during their prime time. They will not invite you if you tell the truth. Even for criticism, they will have some hired so-called hired intellectuals or hired journalists. So when a particular kind of journalists are invited, they will all glorify whatever the government is doing. So the people do not get the real picture, and that is why most people do not know what kind of image India has today. They do not know what is happening vis-a-vis the neighboring countries. There is no neighboring country which we can say is a friend to us anymore. There is no superpower. Now we are trying to play both sides. We are trying a balancing act between America through Quad and otherwise, then Russia, BRICS, and many other organizations, SCO, etc. Now, what happens is that after some time, it may well happen that you are nowhere. And if you want to have independent policy, if you want to be non-aligned, of course, non-alignment has become a taboo for this government. They try to align with everybody. But if you align with everybody, then ultimately you are with nobody and nobody is with you. So you have to see what kind of balancing act is required. And especially during this problem in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas and Abdullah earlier, and with Iran and Lebanon and these countries now in recent months. We have messed up. We have completely messed up. We have forgotten the human face of Indian foreign policy. We have completely forgotten one of our favorites in the Middle East, Palestinians. So our media is largely responsible for that. Even if the government's response is reasonable and balanced, our media will give only one-sided view. They will glorify the killing of innocents. They will not highlight their problems. Instead, they will highlight the capabilities of Israel, what they can do. So all these things together have created an impression that our foreign policy has become very successful, and we have become Vishguru, and everybody in in the Western world as well as the South, global South, looks towards India for any global problem. But as you saw in G20, what was achieved? What was achieved after spending at least 4,500 crores? Nothing was achieved. It was a routine meeting which was held in India, and that's it, and nothing more. What came out? So it was, I mean, the foreign policy became a domestic issue, and foreign policy and all these meetings were utilized for elections. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Thank you.
So, thank you, sir. There's a set of 4 questions on basically they're related to the ideological changes the RSS has undergone, if any. These are, I'll pose them to Mr. Narayanan. One is, why was the Muslim Rashtriya Morcha of RSS marginalized? Number 2, earlier RSS wanted presence of its volunteers in various political parties. What is the official position now? What is the view of RSS on democracy itself? And what are the major ideological changes RSS has undergone, if any? You may like to see whether has there been any transformation, or have they to adapt to the new India that is.
So the question about Muslim Rashtriya Manch, I don't think it has been marginalized. It remains where it was earlier. It is run by its patron is Indresh Kumar, and it continues to do whatever work they were doing. Obviously, it is not going to be a large part of the Sangh. It is always going to be a small part, and it is also a, what should I say, convenient part. That there is a segment of Muslims who are willing to accept that. So the RSS position for a long time has been that it is an organization which is working for Hindus and organizing Hindus, and we've got nothing to do with the Muslims in that sense. It is for them and their organizations to organize, not for us to organize. So, but there is this one, and one of the RSS programs currently ongoing, among the 5 major programs, one is Samajik Samrasta, and which is largely working with Dalit, SC populations and trying to integrate them more into the larger RSS ideological Hindutva fold, which they have not succeeded, because every Vijayadashmi speech, there is always a mention of what has happened and what needs to be done, including many initiatives which are being done. So that is one. What was the second question about democracy?
It's about what is the official position of RSS regarding volunteers being in various political parties, and that what changes have you seen in the last close to 100 years?
I am not a Swayamsevak, so I wouldn't know what exactly the position would be today. So, but the last I've heard is that, which again comes from the Mohan Bhagwat lecture series at Vigyan Bhavan in Delhi, where it was said, there was this particular question was asked, and he said, we are willing to give our Swayamsevaks, like we loan them to the BJP. We are willing to offer them to anyone who would, any political party which wishes. And if Congress wants it, they can take our volunteers. It's just that those parties don't come to us. That's the answer which he gave. I don't think. I mean, if the larger goal is to uh, be part of the entire society. So earlier also, this is something which I've heard that the ideal way would be is to one of the earliest Sir Sanghachalaks have said this, that the ideal way would be in politics would be that people of all political parties would come to the RSS Shaka in the evening, but morning they go and work for the respective political parties and in parliament, as they say, because RSS in the Shaka only teaches how to build character and national. So that's what the position, I suppose, is even today.
So it's been almost 2 hours. So I'll pose the last question for a quick take from both of you. One is a comment and way out. That is, one is that isn't Indian elite exclusively consisting of dominant caste, the deep state, for at least 2 million, yeah, irrespective of who has been in power? And the last one, which on which the comment is, both the speakers presented really ominous portents for India, a nation in making, to become a fraternal nation. Whatever the saner elements are doing is too small. Then what is the way out? So Ambassador Sharma and then Dr. Nair. So,
My personal opinion is that Indian democracy is fast becoming a corporatocracy. Now, these are the businessmen, top businessmen, or crony capitalists who will decide who will come to power. What happened in 2003, entire media was one-sided. Similarly, you can see in Delhi what happens during assembly as opposed to what happens during parliamentary elections. There are political parties which are media creation, corporate media creation. In addition, Hindutva is not the sole domain, or it is not the BJP doesn't have the sole ownership of Hindutva. In each political party, you have such elements. So if you say, if BJP says Jai Shri Ram, then Aam Aadmi Party also says Jai Hanuman or Jai Bajrang Bali, and they go to Hanuman temple. Similar things happen in case of Congress. You go to any Congress campaign and you will find similar campaigns. Not only that, as far as RSS is concerned, its volunteers are everywhere. You go in your neighborhood in Delhi or even in Western UP, you will find the agent for the Congress candidate or SP candidate maybe going to Shakhas or maybe a BJP member. So Congress, Samajwadi Party or Rashtriya Lok Dal or RJD do not have any structure. They are not organized parties. In North India, we call them Byah Barat Ki Party, meaning these people meet in marriages, in funerals, in birthday parties or whatever, but they do not have regular ideological meetings. So when on the day of election or maybe during counting, they are short of volunteers. Now it is the BJP which infiltrates its own volunteers into these political parties. Once I found that in my booth itself, the polling agent for Aam Aadmi Party originally belonged to BJP. Or even in counting, a friend of mine contesting in Meerut, his assembly election, was short of volunteers for counting day. But on the other hand, there were many volunteers who wanted his signatures, who said that, okay, no problem, we will go as your representative. So BJP's machinery is very well oiled. They are very active, and no doubt, at least during elections, they have their volunteers. in all political parties, and all candidates have to use their volunteers as their workers.
So Narayanan, what is the way out, or if any, what can you see?
No, it's not about a way out or anything like that, right? We are a democracy, and a democracy churn is part of democracy, and it will. There are cycles in democracies which come and go. Look at the United States, supposed to be the world's largest democracy. What's happening there? It is bound to happen. Some currents will come up, some currents will slow down. All of these things are part and parcel of the democracy. Or you become a country like China, where one party dominates, right? And which obviously we do not want to happen. I'm not as pessimistic as Ambassador Sharma. I think there are still enough energy left in Indian democracy to balance out all of these things. And there will be people always who, this country has, like they said, the elite have captured the state for millennia. Yes, the elite have captured the state for millennia, but then again, the elite have also been unseated on many occasions. It's not as if it has not happened. It has happened before. It can happen again, and I'm pretty sure it will happen again. And ideologies will also shapeshift depending upon the pressures from the society itself. The larger the number of people who are, so for example, when if you remember, in the late 80s and 90s, the RSS and the left were together in opposing the Dunkel draft onwards, the GATT deal and WTO, all the way up to Enron. I've seen RSS people who, and there were a lot of RSS people who were completely demoralized by the way the organization abandoned the cause. Even today, even within the RSS, there exists a large cohort which is very unhappy with the government's policies. In fact, you can see those things playing out as well. Even you can see snide remarks even from RSS leaders, even in RSS publications. So even that organization, ultimately, like, we are a democracy and our DNA is a democratic DNA. So it gets reflected in the organizations, which it's not only that the organizational DNA reflects in the country, but the country's constitutional DNA also gets reflected in other organizations. It's both ways. It's not a one-way street. So I'm hopeful always. I don't give up hope.
Thank you. On that hopeful note, I would also like to add just the election campaign brought back the Indian Constitution as an article of faith for all political parties. I'm sure there is hope, and on that hopeful note, I would like all the dimensions of the theme of today's webinar and helping us understand the various forces that are at play and in the making of the evolving Indian state, and also giving a head or to our participants about the risks that are at play as this process. Also want to thank our two speakers for fielding all the questions in such a candid manner on a topic which is very sensitive. We are indeed grateful to you, sir, Mr. Sharma, and grateful to you, sir, Mr. Narayanan, for being here and patiently speaking and fielding questions. It's more than 2 hours now. On this note, I would like to thank all the viewers. And for next month, we will have a webinar, most likely on issues relating to rural development and rural distress, that in conjunction with the National Institute of Rural Development, where Mr. Ravi Babu had worked. So that is one thing. So please look out for our notice. And I want to thank our support team, Mr. Sadiq Ali. There are youngsters who are doing pro bono work for us to keep the website going, and posters and the design, the logo, everything. There's a lot of young people who are working for us. And I want to thank everybody. Thank you all.
Thank you.